Hey guys, Level Cap here, and today I want to share my thoughts on the future of Battlefield 2042 going into the new year. I think there are some key moments coming in the very near future that will shine a light on what to expect with future support of the game. And although we don't really have a window looking into the behind-the-scenes operation at DICE, we can certainly make some educated guesses as to what's going on. Now first off, to give a little lay of the land, 2042 had a pretty awful launch in terms of public perception. Two of the game's three pillars of gameplay have more or less fallen away from what the larger player base is actually interested in. What's left is the 2042 base game, which features some controversial changes and a lack of features that most of its predecessors launched with. Plus, with two of the three pillars of gameplay being more or less left out of the equation, 2042's base game weapons and maps feel underwhelming when compared to previous launch content from the franchise. And in addition to all of this, 2042 is currently up against very strong competition in the FPS world, most of which has free-to-play offerings. Halo Infinite's multiplayer was free this year, as is Call of Duty's ever-evolving Warzone mode. PUBG is going free-to-play in a few weeks, and even EA's own free Apex Legends has been putting in extremely strong player numbers. And I'll say this with a fair amount of certainty, regardless of what gameplay ideas and DICE cook up over the next year, I don't think Battlefield can survive in the AAA shooter world without a strong free-to-play component. Now, regarding the best way to integrate a free-to-play component for Battlefield is certainly up for debate, but Battlefield has been grasping onto its old school roots for such a long time, forcing it to miss a lot of good opportunities due to, fear of change, bad studio management, not being aware of the changing gaming scene and the competition that it's up against. I'm sure there's many factors as to why Battlefield has been slow as to evolving its business model. Perhaps some of the new management will shake things up. Now, regarding what's next for Battlefield 2042, I've said it in previous videos, I think the game is actually in a decent state for refinement and expansion moving forward. More content and refined balance are essentially what the game needs most. DICE's support and communication leading up to the holidays has actually been pretty decent overall. Naturally, it does drop off during winter break as most people go on vacation, but it has left the player base without any concrete information regarding what's next for the game. Officially, all we know is that there will be a Season 1 of content in early 2022. Beyond that, no specifics were given. According to data mines and leaks, it appears that there will be one new map, one new specialist, and some guns/gadgets coming out in March, which is quite a ways away. And again, this is unofficial information, but nonetheless, the general reaction to this has been pretty negative, as that's a very, very slow content rollout plan for the game. And I think most of us, myself included, are hoping that these data mines are not reflective of what the actual plan is moving forward. Comparing it to Battlefield 5's content rollout, which was also following a live service model of sorts, by March, Battlefield 5 was already on its third chapter of content. However, to be totally fair, Battlefield 5's early chapters were extremely lackluster. Firestorm was included as additional content in these chapters, new modes were the primary highlights, and there was only 2 new maps added in total during this period. Battlefield 5 started to deliver much more toward the end of its chapter-based content, with 3 new maps in Chapter 4 and 3 more maps plus specific content in Chapter 5. And I gotta say, it would be really disappointing if DICE followed this same content rollout pattern for Battlefield 2042, considering it's basically a formula for how to screw up hype for your game. If you want to maintain momentum, put your best foot forward. One map and some seasonal content launch all the way out in March would be really bad for that momentum. Alternatively, imagine if the first season of content that DICE was announcing was actually 2 or maybe even 3 new maps. I think the general conversation about future support for this game would be drastically different from what it is now. The current weekly based assignments and rotating limited time game modes are fine for filler, but they're certainly no substitute for actual map or weapon or specialist quest-based content. Now, one thing that pretty much all Battlefield games of the past 10 years have had are roadmaps, a detailed plan of what content the community can expect in the coming year or years of support. Even Battlefield 5 had one, even though it did change a little bit over time. And the importance of the roadmap is that it shows the community that DICE is committed to content and support for at least a certain period of time. Even though DICE's official blog posts regarding 2042 have stated that they want to support this game for years to come, well, it means next to nothing in a world where EA can pull funding and support in a heartbeat. DICE's intentions a month ago may have zero implications on what they are thinking today. Especially with the drastic drop in player count, there's a good chance EA is re-strategizing quite a bit. I'm personally a bit skeptical as to if EA is even sticking with its plan to open these new studios to develop more Battlefield-related content. That decision was definitely made before they knew how the latest game would be received. So considering all of that, the communication that we receive in January when employees start trickling back into the offices is going to be key to determining the future of Battlefield 2042. When DICE went radio silent about future content with Battlefield 5 when the roadmap was coming to an end, it actually meant that they were stopping support for the game. With 2042, if we get little to no communication regarding what's coming beyond Season 1, it could mean something similar. A lack of a roadmap in the coming months could very well mean that DICE is intentionally not committing to any content because of a plan to drop support for the game. And looking at this from a game studio's perspective, you would never actually want to communicate intentions to drop support for a major title to the public, let alone probably most of your development team, as it would drastically impact sales for the game. As a developer, you want to keep people buying the game and investing in the game right up until the very second you drop support for it. And while there's always going to be a veil over what EA's official plans are for the game, we can certainly make some assumptions about lack of communication or vagueness, and that's what I'll be watching out for in January. Hopefully DICE will put forward a strong commitment to the game with a roadmap committing to a certain number of maps at the very least. Specifics are important here. Even Battlefield 5's roadmaps had images of maps and specifics about the planned content far in advance. And according to public sales records, Battlefield 2042 has sold better than Battlefield 5. Hopefully that amounts to continued support for the title. Of course, I have no doubt that the crushing negativity surrounding the game has impacted further sales. EA had previously mentioned that they had no plans of discounting 2042 for holiday sales, and yet they did, so it's likely that they're reformulating many of their plans regarding the game. I have no doubts that the expected sales and success of 2042 were drastically different from what it actually got, so to assume that the pre-launch plans wouldn't change is kind of ridiculous. The studio will adapt from expected sales to the reality of sales. The big question now is, how are they going to do that? Will it be a strategy to mitigate revenue loss by trickling out content until they can safely drop support entirely without too much backlash, or will it be a plan to revive the game and return Battlefield back to its former glory? I think you guys know what I would do were I in a position to make those calls, but again, I'm not the money man at EA. I do think that if DICE makes minimal effort going forward with 2042, it could very well be the end of the franchise. If the name Battlefield means overly marketed, underdeveloped, and poor post-launch support, you can imagine the next go-around for the series is going to fare even worse. Anyway, at this point in time, I am still hopeful for the future of this game, but I do know that a lot is riding on the next batch of communication/blog posts going forward. I'll be watching out for vague, non-committal language in the future communication. If there's specifics like numbers of maps, weapons and gadgets, launch window dates, then that's probably good news. If it's more vague language like we want to support this title for years, blah blah blah, well, then it might be time to start worrying a bit more. What do you guys think? Based on the history of the franchise, Battlefield has always been a problematic game that often manages to win the hearts of its fan base back. Will they manage to do that again with Battlefield 2042? Well, only time will tell. Let me know in the comments your thoughts about things going forward. As always, guys, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.